Let me open it to questions if there are any, and there's plenty of talking back and forth we could do among ourselves, but let's see if anyone in the audience has any questions. They have to have provoked somebody. If you could identify yourself too, please.
Sorry. Well, I have some facts here.
If you could identify yourself, please.
Oh, sorry. Carolina Aguilar from Voice of America. According to the Homeland Security facts, 800,000 people have been deported illegally. People have been deported since Obama took office. What do you think about, are those numbers accurate? I think even more than 1 million have been deported in the last 2 years.
Well, let's stick with the number of 800,000 first. And you may be right. It may be 1 million, ma'am. But I make very clear in the book, as opposed to the report and the summary that you will have the opportunity to read. We're not talking about people ordered deported from immigration courts. We're talking about people who've been interdicted at the border, many of which consent to removal, many of which do not claim any. Mrs. Ibarra calls it an application for relief. I call it an application for relief and analogize it to a lawsuit. They never file. We're not talking about people coming to the United States who are interdicted and are never deported. What we're talking about is people coming through courts, 40% of whom never are authorized for deportation and are never removed. Now let me point out something else about that. Just because you're ordered deported doesn't mean that you can't seek other forms of relief. We have a very generous system. So let's say that you are ordered deported because you're a person who asked for asylum. Let's say that during your appeal you met someone, and let's say that it's a legitimate engagement, that you really have not gamed the system, that you genuinely fall in love with someone and you marry them. You can then ask the court to remand your appeal back to the trial court and seek what's called adjustment of status. But let's say that you're denied that. Let's say that the court finds that, no, this is not a valid marriage. In other words, it was not valid at time of inception. You can appeal on that as well. You may end up staying in the United States for years in litigation, but at the end, a court orders you removed. The chances of you being removed are about zero. I'm talking about the dysfunctionality of a court system. I'm not talking about our unwillingness to remove those who say, basically, remove me. I consent to removal. The Obama administration is not enforcing anything different than the Clinton administration did or the Bush administration did. What it's called is the Interior Enforcement Strategy. It was adopted by the Clinton administration in 1999-2000, roughly. It's been in effect since that time. The Bush administration adopted it, and the Obama administration has adopted it. The first thing you do is you secure the borders. The second thing you do is you remove criminal aliens. The third thing you do is you interdict alien smuggling rings. But never in that broad strategy, which is now embraces pages, there is never any mention of immigration courts or deportation orders in the Interior Enforcement Strategy. In other words, a deportation order goes to DHS, and they determine, a non-judicial official determines when an order will be enforced, not the judge who handed the decision down. DHS looks at it and says, oh, we got another deportation order in today. Put that over there with the other ones that just came in yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Now, should they be removing illegal aliens? Yes. Should they be removing criminal illegal aliens first? The answer is yes. But if you do not remove those who have been ordered deported, then you encourage the very same conduct that has led to a growing illegal population. We have a robust system of law. Whether it is protracted, as Ms. Ibarra says, is necessary for it to be effective, or whether it is not, is really not the issue. The issue is, are we providing substantial justice on both sides of the case? And the answer is no, we are not. I want to give you a piece of something to take home with that. The Justice Department, the EOIR, or excuse me, Executive Office for Immigration Review, the agency that manages the courts, It is a statistical agency of the United States, not because it reports statistics as its chief function, but because as a function of its work, it reports the statistics of what it does, reports its business. This is what the National Research Council said. Statistics that are publicly available from government agencies are essential for a nation to advance the economic well-being and quality of life of its people. Its public policymakers are best served by statistics that are accurate, timely, relevant for policy decisions, and credible. The operation of a democratic system of government depends on the unhindered flow of statistical information that citizens, not just Congress, but citizens can use to assess government action. And I respond by saying, in short, EOIR's reports are a sham. They are a pretense of candid audit. Accuracy, credibility, relevance, and timeliness elude this agency and the flow of believable statistics to the public, a flow EOIR not only controls but authors, is more than hindered. Its reports fail the narrow purpose of describing the courts to lawmakers and the broader one of informing the public. And what it does, ma'am, it obscures the very compelling story, and I use this word, the very compelling story of national purpose that is buried beneath statistics that tell us nothing about how these courts don't function correctly. So when you talk about those statistics, look deeper. You'll see that you're not deporting those who've been ordered removed by the courts. Very often, well, 98% of the time, perhaps, you're not. You are deporting those who've been interdicted at the borders and some who we've picked up in prisons and in jail cells, but these are not the people who have had their day in court, have been ordered removed, and filter out into our nation and remain here because DHS doesn't do its job, and that's enforce the order. And remember, this person can always come back and say, my facts have changed. I've married, I've even had children, and if you remove me, my children will suffer hardship. That's called cancellation, and that would be cancellation for someone who entered illegally or remained illegally. So keep all those things in mind when you look at those statistics. The statistics don't tell you the whole story because they're just not telling you the whole story.
Judge,
Thank you.
I disagree
Okay, yeah,
with
go
you.
ahead.
I mean, I disagree with you. Someone who's already been ordered deported cannot come back 10 years later and say the facts have changed and I have children now. Why? Because the law says that once the notice to appear has been issued, everything that you accrue after that it's not valid in your defense. So that's, I mean, I understand your frustration with the system, but that statement is not fully correct. You cannot come back 10 years later and reopen your case. Now, if you have been granted voluntary departure and you haven't left, which is another alternative that the courts give you, that voluntary departure order turns into a deportation order when you don't leave. And if you have been granted voluntary departure, you are barred, by statute, you are barred for 10 years from being able to reopen your case to get any benefit under the Immigration Act. So it's, I mean, your question was, 1 million people have been deported? Yes, the ones that are crossing the border. They're not counting the other ones. He's talking about the ones that didn't get relief, that got granted either voluntary departure, were ordered deported, appealed their cases, and didn't leave the United States. There's about, I don't know, maybe what, 9 million of those?
Yes, 12 million, ma'am.
12 million. How are we going to deport them? We don't have the planes to do it. We don't have the money to do it. There's a proposition that I would put out to you. A legalization program, okay, would cost everyone would apply. We would get criminals, everybody would apply. Everybody would be fingerprinted. They would come out from the woodwork. They would come out to apply. Grant those that merit granting and deport the other ones. But at least they'll be coming to you. You'll be able to find them through a legalization program because they'll apply for the benefit, we'll know who they are. That may be a solution.
I don't want to get into a debate. I mean, I'm happy to have a debate at another panel on this, but I want to stick specifically to the immigration courts.